Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. Before I tell you this story, I should tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a crossdresser for about 16 years, and it's always been my dream to live as a woman for a few weeks or a month just to see if I could do it. I never thought I'd have the chance or courage to do it, but recently I got a golden chance to give it a try. I was lucky enough to hear from a kind woman who offered to let me stay in the spare room of her London home. We had met a few weeks earlier for a quick drink and a chat. I got to Anne's house early this morning with a big suitcase full of my favorite women's clothes and makeup. The only men's clothes I had with me were the ones I was standing up in, which was one of Anne's conditions. As I struggled to get through the door, she took one look at me in my jeans and t-shirt, smiled, and shook her head to tell me off. She said, "Nice to see you, but please change out of those boring old men's clothes as soon as you can. I've already told everyone in the neighborhood that my cousin Carol from Surrey is coming to stay for a few weeks, so I want to see you dressed as a woman the whole time you're here. If they see a strange man around, they might ask some awkward questions." Well, that was fine with me. After all, I had come here to be Carol for 24 hours a day. She also said, "I'm going to the store, so make yourself at home. In a couple of hours, I'll be back, and if you're ready, I might have a surprise for you." She pointed to the stairs and said, "Your room is at the top of the stairs on the left." With that exciting promise, she walked away, leaving me gasping for air and excited for my weeks as Carol. I went upstairs and found a fairly large bedroom with a double bed, 2 nightstands, and a dresser. A wardrobe with sliding mirror doors took up the whole of one wall. I threw my big, heavy suitcase on the bed, opened it, and began to unpack. I carefully hung up all of my dresses on hangers in the closet, put my pants in the drawers, and set out my makeup and brushes on the dressing table in a neat way. Before I went on, I soaked in a long, hot bath. I had already shaved my whole body the day before because I thought it would save time. I used a strong depilatory cream on my body and wax on my face, so I was still hairless and very smooth, and I probably would be for a while. I used a foam bath oil with a scent from Body Shop and washed my long, dark hair with apple shampoo and conditioner to make it look more girly. I stayed in the bath for a long time because I was still scared. After about half an hour, I worked up the courage to get out and dry off. As I wrapped a towel around my wet hair, I decided it was finally time for me to become Carol. I wanted to change into the clothes I felt most comfortable in as soon as possible, but I wasn't sure how I felt about it because I'd never been dressed as a woman in front of anyone else, let alone a stranger. How would Anne describe me? And more importantly, how would I compare to the real thing? I started by spraying myself all over with musk-scented Impulse body spray and putting on a pair of 9 Denier pretty poly, almost black nylons, a black Gossard lace suspender belt, and top and pants to match. When I roll the nylons over my legs, I always feel very girly. I like to enjoy this part for a few minutes in front of the mirror after putting on a pair of black high heels. I should really wear a size 7, but I always manage to squeeze into a size 6 to make my feet look a little more girly. Since it was still early in the day, I thought the career girl look would be the most appropriate and least noticeable. I have a plum-colored pencil skirt and a black jacket that always get my heart racing. I put on a buttoned pink shirt with a heart-shaped neckline and no collar. I finished the look with a neat black leather belt. Since I also have a pair of plum shoes that go with the skirt and top I was going to wear, I decided to switch them out. As I used my hand to steady myself on the dressing table and bent my knee backwards to change a shoe, I looked in the mirror and saw that I was striking a very girly pose. So far, so good. I kept looking in the mirror and smoothed out the lines of my skirt and jacket. Then I took off my jacket and sat down at the vanity to put on my makeup. I put on a thin layer of cream and let it dry for a few minutes. I was taking extra care because I wanted to get this right. After that, I put some eyeshadow on. I used my favorite shades of plum again and tried to blend them as well as I could. Then I put on 2 coats of black mascara, which made my upper lashes longer and my lower lashes a little darker. Then I put on a deep plum lipstick, which was the best part of all. I put on 2 coats and blotted each one with a tissue. I then put on a coat of lip seal to keep it from running before moving on to the last steps, which were the hair and jewelry. I blew my hair dry, brushed it, and sprayed it to make it straight and girly. I quickly put on a pair of big gold hoops while looking in the full-length wardrobe mirror to see how it turned out. I don't think I've ever looked that good before. When I put my hands on my hips, I realized I hadn't painted my nails yet. I used a plum-colored varnish that matched my lips and waited what seemed like forever for them to dry. I let them grow for about a month, so they would be long and pretty for this day. I put a coat of nail strengthener on my nails and then 2 coats of varnish. When they were both dry, I decided that since it was a special occasion, I deserved a light spray of Chanel perfume. Finally, I had a ring bracelet, a delicate gold necklace with my chosen name, Carol, on it, a few rings on my fingers, and a long, satisfied look at the end result. I looked great. As I made a few small changes to my hairstyle with my fingers, I started to understand why I had let my hair grow. The real thing was so much better than the wigs I used to wear in the beginning when I could only change into Carol at night or on weekends. I hoped that Anne would let me use her curling tongs on my hair when she got back. It looked pretty girly, but it was too straight and needed something to break up the lines. I walked to the living room, poured myself a gin and tonic, heavy on the gin because my nerves were acting up again, and sat down to read Anne's magazines until she came back. At last, I heard the front door open, and Anne came in with a few shopping bags. I ran over because I was so excited I could hardly hold it together. "So what do you think?" I asked in a coy way as I posed in the hallway. She looked me over from head to toe and said, "You look pretty good, but there's one thing that could be better. Your hair needs to be done up. Come on, I have an appointment for a perm at the best hair salon in town." When she saw how shocked I was, she asked, "Are you really going to do this?" I said yes, but I was still a little unsure, even though she seemed to know what I was thinking because she focused on the one thing I wasn't happy with. I quickly went upstairs, got my purse, and put a few makeup items and some cash in it. I put the bag over my shoulder, grabbed a black coat that came to my nylons, and walked down the stairs nervously to meet Anne, who was waiting by the front door. Just as I put the coat over my shoulders, I felt a wave of fear come over me. I put up a shaking hand and said, "Wait, I think I need a cigarette before I leave. I have a lot of butterflies in my stomach." I reached into my bag and took out a pack. I gave Anne one and she smiled and pulled out a lighter. She lit hers first, and when my hands were shaking too much, she gave me one. I put the cigarette between my lips and bent over to point the end of the cigarette into the flame. As I did this, I caught a glimpse of myself in Anne's hallway mirror. I felt like I was standing somewhere else in the hall and watching from a distance. I saw what looked like a beautiful woman take a deep breath as she lit her cigarette. Her face looked calm and relieved as she took the smoke gratefully into her lungs. I kept looking at this woman as she took the cigarette out of her mouth and let out a long stream of smoke toward the ceiling. Her every move seemed to mirror mine in a strange way. The truth hit her all at once. I was the woman in the mirror. I had only ever worn this outfit by myself before, but standing next to Anne gave me a whole new and fun way to look at things. Even though I wasn't completely calm, this gave me the boost I needed, so I decided that now or never. When I opened the front door and stepped out into this strange new world for the first time, I was scared. With each step, it got harder, and the sound of my heels on the ground reminded me of what I was trying to do. Anne went after me and locked the door behind her. She put the keys in her handbag and closed it with a loud, unsettling click. When I saw her determined and knowing smile, I knew there was no point in arguing or going back. Here I was, standing in broad daylight, dressed from head to toe as a woman, calling myself Carol, and about to go into a strange town full of shoppers on a Friday afternoon, when all I had ever done before was go out at 1 a.m. for a quick, scary walk around the block. "Come on, Carol," she said with a wicked smile as she saw how uncomfortable I was. "We don't want to be late, and don't think I'll let you go back inside. If you really want to, you can stand outside all day, but it's cold and the neighbors might be curious, so I think you should come with me." She brushed past me and started walking down the garden path. The high heels made me put the flat part of my sole down before my heel, which still made a clicking sound when it hit the hard ground. It also kept me from walking too quickly, which added to the elegance. Anne had said that it was a little chilly and that there was a light breeze. We walked to Anne's car, where she helped me open the passenger door. Anne turned on the car's engine and started to drive toward town. We hadn't gone far, maybe a quarter of a mile, when Anne stopped the car and parked it. I asked, "What's up? Didn't you say that we were going to the hairdresser?" I'd rather not be late. Now that I was safe in the car, the idea of having a professional make my hair look more feminine started to sound good. Anne said, "Don't worry, we won't be late, but I'm out of cigarettes and I saw that you only have a few left." "There's a newsstand right there." She parked the car, then reached into her purse and pulled out a 20-pound bill. "Get some for yourself and a few magazines while you're there." She said, "Look, you're going to have to face people sooner or later unless you plan to spend the next 2 weeks locked up in your room like Rapunzel or something. Why not start right now?" This made sense, but I didn't start to wonder why Anne hadn't bought her cigarettes when she went shopping in the morning until much later. At the time, I was too scared to think straight. If I could have, I might have figured out that this was all part of a plan. I got out of the car and started walking toward the Martin's newsstand. The sound of my heels clicking on the sidewalk was very loud and seemed to reverberate all over town. As I got out of the car, I was sure that everyone on the street was looking at me, and I prayed that it was just nerves again. I pushed the door open and went in. There was a line of about 4 people, so I spent a few minutes reading magazines until they left. I picked up the latest Cosmopolitan New Woman, what a great title, and Woman's Own, which came with a free lipstick that I could add to my collection. When there were no more people in line, I cleared my throat, walked up to the counter, and asked the girl behind it for some cigs in the most girly way I could. She grabbed the cigarettes from the display behind her and rang them up at the cash register without giving them a second thought. "Oh, don't forget the magazines," I said this time with a little more confidence as I pointed to the stack I had put on the counter. "Oh, sure." She put in the price of each magazine. I gave her the 20-pound bill and then opened my purse. As I put the cigarettes and change away, I couldn't help but feel comforted when I saw all my makeup sitting there, the same makeup I was wearing on my eyes and lips at the time. I closed the bag with a snap, thanked the girl, and went to leave the store. A man who had just walked in held the door open for me when I got to it, and I thanked him. As I walked back to my car, I was so excited that I almost started running. Anne was the first person I wanted to tell about my first success. I thought I was worth $1 million. "See?" she said, ripping off the wrapper from one of her cigarettes and handing me another. "You just need to be sure of yourself." Anne drove off as we lit our cigarettes. "Now for the last part of your change," she said with a smile. When we got to the salon, I walked in confidently behind Anne, and a nice young man offered to hang up my coat. All of a sudden, someone said, "Miss Holloway." I turned around and saw a pretty blonde who I assumed was the hairdresser speaking. It took me a few seconds to figure out that she was talking to me. "Yes," I said in a shy way. "I'm Julie, and I'm your hairdresser. Please take a seat and I'll be right there." "Do you want some coffee?" she asked with a smile. I nodded and took a seat. Julie came back after a while with a cup of coffee. "Okay, Miss Holloway," she said, putting her fingers through my hair to make it look better. "What do you want me to do for you?" Anne answered for me just as I was about to say something. She told her to make it blonde with highlights. I was in shock because I didn't see this coming, but it was too late to back out now. "Oh, I see," Julie said as she laughed and brushed her own blonde hair back. Anne said she was going to go out for about an hour, leaving me to my own devices. A short time later, I was sitting in the chair and looking in the mirror with foil on my hair. I couldn't see how this mess would end, so to take my mind off it, I flipped through some magazines, paying special attention to the fashion and makeup pages. I wanted to try so many of the different styles. Before I knew it, an hour and a half had gone by, and I was sitting back in the chair looking at the result while Julie held up the mirror and made a few small changes. When I looked back and saw a beautiful woman I didn't know, I was shocked. I looked beautiful, but most of all, I looked like a whole new woman. Julie had really done a great job. My hair had been curled, but not too tightly, so it hung loose and curly between my shoulders and the small of my back. The new golden color looked great with my blush and lipstick because it was so different from the color of my hair. It was held on by 2 clips behind my ears, which made my earrings look great, and she added a small black bow to the back. The color was a beautiful golden blonde with streaks of lighter color running through it. I told her that I looked great. When I paid, I thanked Julie and left a nice tip for her. Anne had come back by this time, and she was just as amazed as I was. As Anne and I walked back to her car from the salon, I could feel everyone looking at me. Anne suggested that we stop at the shopping center on the way back to the house. Now that I was sure of myself as Carol, I wanted to buy a few new dresses, more pants, and different makeup to go with my new blonde hair, so I agreed. I felt great, walking around the mall with all the shoppers, none of whom gave a second thought to my gender, except for the men, who obviously thought about it a lot, but thankfully for the right reasons. I also bought a new skirt and jacket made from brown wool, as well as 3 white blouses. I tried them all on in the changing room, which made me feel bad, but no one seemed to notice anything strange. My new blonde hair went well with these lighter colors, and I thought I'd find a good reason to wear a nice suit soon. The best part of the afternoon was when I went to a shoe shop and tried on at least a dozen pairs of shoes before deciding which ones to buy. I stood up and walked to the full-length mirror with each pair I tried on to see how they looked with my legs. In the end, I chose a pair of black and a pair of white stilettos. I could take my time and pick out exactly what I wanted. I bought several full sets of black, white, and pink pants, as well as nylons in different colors to match, a few teddies, and a new coat for outside. I must have spent about £800 on new clothes and makeup, but I could afford it, and I had a feeling I would need them. When we got back to the apartment, I was so shocked that I almost dropped all my groceries. 2 strange-looking men were waiting for us in the armchairs. "How are you?" Anne smiled and said, "Hello, Alan. Please meet Carol, who is my cousin from Surrey. She is going to stay with me for a few weeks." The 2 men laughed and said hello in a friendly way. Anne had clearly planned all of this from the beginning and was making sure I didn't have time to think about what was going to happen. Thanks for watching. The rest won't be viewable on YouTube, so check out Patreon if you want more.